BBC News at midday. The Hawaiian authorities say wildfires on the island of Maui have killed at least 93 people, making them the deadliest to hit the US in more than a century. The state's governor says the number of casualties is expected to rise significantly in the coming days. Hundreds of people remain unaccounted for and hundreds of others are in emergency evacuation shelters. This woman lives on Maui and told the BBC some tourists were carrying on with their holidays as normal.
Our people just died in 3 days ago, or the same waters the very next day these visitors, tourists were swimming in. And that says a lot about where their heart and mind is through all of this and where our heart and mind is. You don't see our people swimming, snorkeling, surfing. Nobody is having fun in tragedy and continuing their lives like nothing has happened.
The Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says he's open to requests for patients from other UK nations to be treated on the NHS in England. He's invited Scottish and Welsh ministers for talks on how best to tackle waiting lists. Mr Barclay suggested the two nations have worse NHS delays than England in some areas, which both devolved administrations have robustly disputed. Ministers are facing renewed pressure to tackle boat crossings in the Channel after 6 migrants died when a vessel sank off the French coast yesterday. Another 54 were rescued by the French Coast Guard last night after a second boat got into difficulties. One Tory backbencher said the UK had a moral duty to act, while campaigners have warned that more people will die unless safe routes are created. Labour's shadow cabinet minister, Bridget Phillipson, says the Home Office is completely incompetent.
We need tougher action to crack down on criminal gangs that are exploiting people, putting them in harm's way, often leading to such terrible and tragic consequences. But under this government, we've seen convictions fall for those people smugglers. We've seen them running rings around the government, and we need much tougher action on tackling those problems at source.
The Wales Secretary, David T.C. Davis, insisted that efforts to reduce illegal crossings were working.
The government have been stopping boats. There are record numbers of people arriving in Europe at the moment, but the actual numbers coming from France into the United Kingdom have gone down. There's a lot of work that's been undertaken to achieve that. We're working very closely with the French government now to stop boats being launched. Obviously, we haven't stopped them all. It's going to continue to be a problem, but we have stopped a lot.
Ukraine says at least 7 people have died after Russian forces shelled 2 villages in the southern region of Kherson. A couple, their 23-day-old baby and 12-year-old son, and another man were killed in Shroka Balka. 2 other people died in the neighbouring village Stanislav, which officials claim was struck 12 times with artillery. Moscow hasn't responded. The Education Secretary in England, Gillian Keegan, has said A-level grades will be lower this year than in 2022. In an article in the Sunday Times, she says the marking system is returning to normal after the pandemic, and universities are aware results will be similar to those in 2019. Claire Marchant, who runs the admissions service UCAS, says they're ready to help pupils.
We're certainly focused on this cohort going through now. When we talk about the COVID generation, we've got to remember that this cohort that wake up with results on Thursday, this is the first set of external exams that they have sat. We know that they welcome exams as a means of assessment. So our job really is to support them.
The government says all new public buildings in England will be required to provide separate single-sex toilets. The Minister for Women and Equalities, Kemi Badenoch, said the move towards gender-neutral toilets had compromised privacy for women and girls. A consultation on the plans will start tomorrow. Disabled toilets will not be affected by the changes. The Miss Universe organisation has cut ties with its Indonesia franchise after allegations of sexual harassment. Several contestants have filed police complaints saying they were asked to strip for supposed body checks and were photographed topless. The organisation is also cancelling this year's pageant in Malaysia, which is run by the same company. BBC News.